Welcome, Veteran Millionaire Academy. My name is Devon Ortiz. I'm a co-founder here at VMA, and we couldn't be more excited for you to embark on this journey with us. We've allocated tens of thousands of hours in our personal real estate endeavors, leveraging our VA home loans to build multi-million-dollar wealth. Now we want to teach it to you and give you all the information needed to make a well-informed decision, regardless of the market conditions or the economic conditions of wherever you're leveraging this specific loan product. We're going to give you our successes, our experiences, and our failures through building our real estate portfolios, as well as being top producers in the real estate spaces that we serve. I'm currently ranked number 4 in North America at the fastest growing brokerage. Now, that's not to impress you, but to impress upon you that our systems, processes, and information that is backed with action from the people that go ahead and move forward with us have been able to build multi-million-dollar wealth regardless on whether they're stationed on the East Coast or the West Coast. So get ready, as it's going to seem like you're drinking through a fire hose, but you're going to have a lot of resources to be able to build out your battle plan as you continue to move through VMA. Look forward to talking to you soon.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the beginning stages of developing your strategy. And like a lot of things that you're going to do in life, step one is going to be, properly preparing and having a plan. So Rexton, if you don't mind going to the next slide, having a plan starts with setting some goals. And we're going to talk through in a little bit more detail kind of what that means. And this is going to feed into the homework that we're going to give you at the end of this first module. So we need to develop goals related to what we're trying to actually accomplish. Because right now we're starting from the aspect and from the point of view that we want to buy a house, right? We want to use our VA home loan benefit to buy a house or to invest. But what does that really mean, right? That is not a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goal. So we need to change the way that we're thinking about what we're trying to do into something that we can actually track and hold ourselves accountable to. So we're going to talk about developing a SMART goal. When we actually get done with the module today, we're going to send you a worksheet that's going to have the structuring for a SMART goal on it. And then when we come back from mod 2, we're going to do a little check on learning, and we'll talk through what our SMART goals were just a little bit, and we'll help you refine those and make sure that we're doing those right. So I also we're going to add the how, like what consistent actions are you going to take to achieve that goal? Having a goal and writing it down is great, but it's worthless piece of paper, that SMART goal sheet, if we're not actually taking the action and we're actually not going out and doing the legwork and putting in the elbow grease that's required to get that goal accomplished. So we're going to talk through a little bit of that and kind of how to set some metrics in place. Like, what do I have to do? Okay, I've gone through Bravo. I've set my SMART goal as I want to own X amount of doors, or I want to own this type of property. What's it going to take? Like, what are the daily disciplines that you're going to have to go through in order to achieve that goal? We want you to think about that, and we want you to add that to your goal setting. And we want to create short range and long range goals, right? So short range being 1 to 5 years. Like, what do I want to get accomplished in 1 to 5 years? Is it I want to own 1 property, 2 properties? And again, you don't have to know this right now, but by the end of today's course, we hope that you have enough information, you've seen enough of these case studies to where you can say, hey, this is a realistic, specific, and measurable goal for me to have in my next 1 to 5 years. And then what does it look like beyond that? If you're gonna, if everything you did went the way you wanted it to go, where are you going to end up in 5+ years? What does your real estate portfolio look like? What does your bank account look like? Because that's what we're talking about here. And then you're going to you want to make sure that those close range goals actually feed into those long range goals. So if I'm setting a goal to own real estate, my long range goal is probably going to include those stair steps into that first one. My first goal being achieved is going to set up my 5-year goal. So be thinking about that. That's like the food for thought we want you to have in your head as we go through this today, because that's going to be the homework, and that's what we're going to build off of in mod 2. Rexton, can you go to the next one for me? All right, so this is really, really big, is taking inventory of your finances. Because I'll tell you this, I talk to several hundred service members and veterans a year. It's probably like a low number. I probably talk to 500 or 700 service members and veterans a year. And everybody has a slightly different number of, this is what I want my payment to be. This is what I can afford. And so what almost never happens is there's almost never a written budget that actually supports that number. We've come up with that number because that's what we pay in rent right now, or we come up with that number because it's a round number and it's close to what I think, or what my BAH is. And you never actually take an accounting of what your budget looks like. So what we're going to have you do, and you already have this downloadable, is we're going to do an actual written budget where we're going to line out all of your expenses, everything that you spend on a monthly basis. And at the bottom of that, you're going to have a net as far as your income, what's left over after I include all of those expenses in that sheet. And you're either going to find out one of two things. You're going to find out, I don't have as much money after all my bills are paid that I thought I had. And you're going to need to adjust fire on what you want as a payment, or you're going to have to lean on, somebody like Devin and myself to help you kind of house hack and make your next purchase more affordable, or you're going to have to adjust fire, or you're going to find, hey, you know what? I actually have a little bit more disposable income than I thought. Maybe I can look at that other value add property, or maybe I can step up into a duplex and make it manageable. So we're going to have you do that. And then we're going to work on getting a pre-approval. We're going to talk through, okay, based on your budget, based on what you make, what would you actually qualify for? And what does that mean as far as what properties are out there? And then we're going to use this information that comes from your budget, and we're going to start structuring an investment strategy that actually works dollars and cents wise, because it doesn't make any difference. It's totally useless having the information if you're not putting a plan in place. Failing to plan is planning to fail. And if you're not setting up your budget, when you're taking on a new debt, you're either going to shoot yourself in the foot and wish you had done something different later, or you're going to bite off more than you can chew, and you're going to put yourself in a stressful situation. We're going to help you avoid both of those pitfalls by doing this. And Rex, you can hit the next one. So before Devin jumps into this next section, is there any questions from anybody right now? Just throw them in the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself. And if there's not, I'm just going to take it as we're doing a real good job.
All right, so hone in your investment criteria, what to consider. Definitely location. What's your property type? What's your rental type? Your renovation strategy, and then your future equity. These are the top 5 things to consider when it comes to your investment criteria. So location, we want to take into consideration things like economic indicators, market trends, infrastructure and development. Where you see cranes, you should see opportunity, because those developers have oftentimes spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, on surveys on population growth, on environmental concerns, you name it, to get to the point in which they can plant a flag in that soil and go ahead and put that crane up. They spend a lot of money. So you should see that there's definitely new infrastructure coming into the area for A, B, and C reason, depending on what city, county in which you're looking to purchase. Neighborhood factors, some gentrification. What's going on? Is there a wave of city or county money that's going into specific parks, communities in order to rehab those? Legal and tax considerations. The tax law is only written for 2 types of people in America: those that own corporations and those that own real estate. And while you leverage real estate, you should go ahead and talk about opening up some corporations or things that you could leverage as tax structures, and go ahead and leverage the corporate ladder structure that everyone uses in the investment world. Affordability is different than what you actually qualify for. So taking that into consideration, as well as the affordability of renters in the prospective areas in which you're looking to purchase, because an average 1-bedroom may go for, say, $1,800 in one zip code and $2,250 in another zip code. Now, that is different depending on which state you're in, of course. And then proximity to jobs and job hubs like hospitals or faculty for colleges and things of that sort, as well as military installations, networking, local knowledge. We know here in San Diego, where I'm currently at, that there is the 3rd biggest biotech community in a specific area along Interstate 5. So those are all great things to consider in your specific area when looking to purchase, because that can set you up for massive success with short-term equity faster than purchasing in other places.
Yeah, Brexton, real quick, I just want to expand on that real quick for some of the people that are in here. So, one of two things, right? So, one, if you're talking to a real estate professional and you're getting advice from let's say from an agent, you've made the terrible mistake where you're not talking to Devin about this stuff, and you get in touch with somebody else. If they're not taking you through this stuff, if they're not breaking this down at a granular level, so you can understand the market that you're about to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million into, then you're talking to the wrong person. And there can be some really important decisions that get made because of this information, right? This should and could completely change your thought process on where you're going to buy, what neighborhoods, what price points. And when you're looking to make an investment, right? This is the Bravo module. This isn't just I want to buy a house so that I have a roof over my head. That's fine. We can help you do that too. But if you're developing an investment strategy, you have to look at it like an investor. And an investor, just like Devin says, spends tens of thousands of dollars to take demographic reports, to look at what's getting built, what industries are coming into town, where are big corporations spending a ton of money to provide, locations for work, where is Amazon building a distribution center? Those things are things that you need to consider when you're building out what your next investment is going to look like. Okay, you can go next.
All right, property type. We're here talking about multifamily investing and developing your pathway to $1 million wealth. So this is a specific Bravo course aimed at 2 to 4 units. But don't forget that this is not a one and done entitlement. You could leverage this entitlement as many times as you want throughout your life and accumulate as many type of property types as you want, including manufactured homes, as long as it's built after 1976 and it's fixed to a permanent foundation and you own the land, you're good to go. A planned unit development, a single family residence, whether that may be in a community with an HOA fee or not. In addition, condos and townhomes are great options as well, especially if you're feeling like the numbers are just too frightful for you. You may have to take a one step prior to getting into the multifamily investing. And we're going to get into that. What is your risk tolerance and what is your do's and don'ts and what can your family afford and how can we create this entire all-encompassing game plan that'll work differently like a formula specifically for you and your family that's much like your thumbprint. Every single one of us has a different thumbprint on this call right now. And so everyone's strategy is going to be a little bit different moving forward as we proceed forward through the Bravo course. So these are the 4 different rental types I want you guys to understand. These are the 4 different evaluation models when I'm helping anyone evaluate the property and whether it's a good deal or a bad deal. You'll see properties even stay on market where people are passing by it every single day, attending open houses, looking at it on common search engines like Redfin, Zillow, etc., and passing on these properties. And it could just be because they're looking at the property with the wrong lens. For instance, there is long-term unfurnished rentals. That's what most people are analyzing the on-market deals as. Then there's long-term furnished. Then there's midterm rentals, which are great for traveling nurses, phlebotomists, military on orders, oftentimes above 30 days, 60, 90 days at a time, even up to months and months and months, where that specific contractor that's in charge of locking in the housing for the nurses, phlebotomists, or military on orders, that they will have for 6 months at a time. And then number 4, which oftentimes is the most profitable, but is like an active hotel business. You have check-in, check-out, daily, weekly. It's going to be your short-term rental analysis. So those are the 4 different ways to analyze a property and underwrite a deal. And 3 of those may go ahead and the numbers suggest that it's not a good deal. And then boom, you hit the nail on the head with the 4th evaluation and it ends up penciling out. Then we take another step forward and we see if it ends up being the right property for you. So we're going to go over the renovation strategy, but before you get into really biting off a chunk of money, of budget, of all these type of things, you need to determine your risk tolerance. Chris, do you have any foresight or insight in regards to how someone would develop or sit down with their significant other to see what their risk tolerance would be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple different factors. So one, when you're deciding, right? So when we're talking about risk tolerance, we're talking about, how deep are you going to get into this thing? And then when you're looking at properties, how much love does this thing need for you to be comfortable, right? Because some people, they're okay with the property that needs a facelift, but they don't want to have to gut something from the ground up, or they just don't have the capital or access to the assets to do that. So we have to determine, between you and whoever else you're making this decision with, what kind of a what kind of a renovation actually works for you and what can you make happen. Now, with a VA loan, there are situations and there is financing where you can actually get a loan to help you improve the property. So those are going to be, I mean, kind of like a middle ground where maybe it's a little bit too much capital for me to come up with. And it's not just a facelift. It's not just paint and baseboards. Maybe I need a kitchen. Maybe I need a bathroom. Maybe it needs a new AC unit, something that's like a big ticket item. And I just don't have the cash reserves to do it, which not a lot of us do coming out of the service or as veterans. We don't have a big chunk of money. Otherwise we, wouldn't need some of the benefits that we have. So you can do a VA renovation loan, which is going to let you get between $35,000 and $50,000 towards the improvement of that house. And you just have to work with an approved contractor, determine which improvements you're going to do during the or just right after the purchase is done, and you can actually borrow that money to help you do some of those renovations. So you're going to have to determine, where are we? And if it goes outside of that scope, if you're looking at it and Devin's helping you look at it, he goes, homeboy, this is going to be way more than 50 grand. We're talking 100, 120 grand. Are you guys okay with doing that over a long period of time? Or is there some alternative options that you're willing to take on? Maybe you're taking on partners or other people that want to invest in the property with you to help you get it up to par, because maybe there's some future equity out there, or maybe if you were to improve it enough, there's some money to be made when you sell it eventually. And those are all things you're going to have to talk through to figure out what you want to do and what your risk tolerance is as a buyer.
It's a great segue to talk about leveraging alternatives. One of the great alternatives that we have leveraged for yourself as well as Rexland's deals and hundreds of families over the past few years is that negotiating seller finance repairs, whether they know it or not. Oftentimes, the sellers don't know that they're really going to be financing repairs when we go ahead and get a massive credit of 50, 60, 70, $100,000, and then we chop it up on how we want to allocate it on the back end and structure that credit appropriately. So there's two ways you can get it done with seller finance repairs: get the credit and then allocate it appropriately on how you see fit, and then work with the seller and their representation to get that documentation necessary in order to fit in the guidelines for whatever state you're purchasing in. But then on the flip side, you can go ahead and during your due diligence process, you get invoices of how much these things are going to cost from whoever the contractor, ABC roofing company, etc. And then from there, you tell the seller that at close of escrow, these invoices are to be paid at closing, so that you get a new roof at closing, you get a new HVAC system at closing, you get new flooring, baseboards, tape, mud, texture, paint, bathroom remodel, whatever it is. You can get that done to where the seller is happy because they're getting their net proceeds. They're able to move on. You're happy because you're able to fund the repairs through the seller actually cutting checks at close of escrow, because most sellers, almost no seller, is going to want to replace anything or put any more money into the property prior to closing. So that's one way to get what you want with leveraging that you're going to close on the property, which is always going to make the seller happy. That's the reason why they selected your offer. Which projects can you take on yourself? Really break down your punch list as you go through the property and the renovation into two different columns and two different allocations. What can you put in some elbow grease and some sweat equity? And then what's outside of your scope, your lane, and your ability to actually complete in a timely manner? And because those two columns are so important, you want to know what the third-party service providers are going to be needed, because those are oftentimes going to be the things that are going to stress the budget the most, because you're not having to pay for labor when you're doing it yourself, right? You're just paying for your material. Which updates do you focus on? Can anyone on the call right now tell me where, if you were to renovate one or two places in an entire property, interior or exterior, where do you get the most return on investment?
The kitchen or the backyard.
Got it. So we got the kitchen and the backyard, which are very drastic and polar opposites as well. And I thank both of you for hopping on and being so courageous to say what you were thinking, feeling, and what you truly believe. Kitchen is a great place to invest the money. It goes a very long way, as well as a master bathroom. The exterior and hardscaping is what they call it in the backyard. Almost never do you get a return on investment from hardscaping alone, because everyone wants their exterior done so completely different. And most people are going to spend their time inside the confines of the home and are spending and looking at where they're going to spend the most of their time. So I mean, they're making a decision within the interior confines of the home mostly. I'm not saying that there's not an exception to every rule, that when you see a pristine backyard that has everything decked out, that doesn't just make it pop. But you can't just have a booming backyard and then not anything on the interior that's really making it pop. So generally speaking, for America, for the average consumer and for the average tenants, they are looking for the nice shiny things. So the nice shiny things are going to be in the kitchen, master bathrooms, those type of places. And then thinking about your renovation timeline, this is huge, because every day that you hold the property, you're going to be paying interest to hold that loan. So essentially, a general rule of thumb is you would take your entire mortgage, and to understand what all your holding cost is per day, you take your mortgage and you divide it by 30. And that comes up with your daily holding costs associated with the property. And you could see where you're not just paying for time, material, the labor, you're paying for the time that you're holding the property in total, and not just the workforce's time that you're bringing on the job site. And this could range, I mean, depending on what state you're in, it could be hundreds of dollars every single day that you hold that property. So paying attention to your renovation timeline, and then making sure that you have performance clauses written into your contracts when you're dealing with contractors is huge, because oftentimes a contractor can go ahead and delay a job from getting done from not just a few weeks and not just a few months, but I literally have seen a woman that's been trying to build an accessory dwelling unit in her backyard for over 2.5 years. Yes, 2.5 years. It's a debacle. It's a horrible thing that's going to end up in litigation. So just make sure you guys protect yourself when it comes to inking the dotted line with contractors. Have performance clauses, have guarantees within your contracts, and protect yourself at all times.
Real quick on this one. One of the things that I want to touch on that I do see a lot of people make the mistake on, right? So Devin touched on it. Which projects can you take on yourself? We're all military background. We all have can-do attitudes, and we all feel like we can do all kinds of things. Be realistic with yourself and really understand what it is that you can and can't do, because you're probably, if you bite off more than you can chew, you're going to pay to do it twice. You're going to pay for the material and everything and all your time to get it done. Then you're going to pay a professional to come in and fix it, because nobody's going to want to buy your crooked tile or whatever it is that you maybe didn't have the right knowledge base for. So be realistic with yourself. And also, it's going to help you be realistic with your budget. One of the strategies that we've used, actually Rexland on this call, is one of the founders of VMA, is what we consider like a surge renovation. So he targeted the non-owner occupied units on his triplex, and he put a lot of time, energy, and effort in making sure that he could convert those rental units and update them in the first 45 and 60 days. Because when you buy a house, when you buy a piece of property, generally you're not going to have a payment for 30, 45, or 60 days after you close, depending on the timeline. So you might get a couple months where there's no mortgage payment, and you can use that money to fix up those rental units. So by the time payment one rolls around, you've already given those other units a facelift, and then you can improve your owner occupied one, the one that you're going to live in, over a much longer time, because that's not as important to generate top dollar for the rental units. So you can use a surge technique, and you can get the unit or units that are going to bring in the most money if they're updated first, and you can worry about the one you live in. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've slept in Connex boxes and on the ground in the mud. I could give a shit what my house looks like first. I'll take my time and get it done. But I need the renter to pay top dollar.
All they know.
All right, so future equity, really going to go one of two ways. I want you guys to think about when analyzing your property or your next deal, it's going to go one of two routes. Do you want to hold this property and add it to your investment portfolio or the portfolio you're trying to start to create passive income? Or do you want to invest in a space in which is going to have faster appreciation? You could exit out of, sell, and then invest that into your next purchase. That's going to be two entirely different strategies that could have you purchase in two completely different zip codes, because one zip code may have superior school districts and people are always willing to pay more to have their kids go to superior school districts. Maybe the other zip code is having a big push of local funding coming in and gentrifying the entire area to where there's going to be a massive push of equity and appreciation over the next 12, 24, and 36 months. Remember on a previous slide, I told you that the tax benefits were only written in America for two types of people, those that own corporations and real estate. Well, within real estate, if you live in the home for 2 of the past 5 years, if you're single and it's just all by yourself, you can sell your property and profit up to $250,000 and not pay any taxes. And then if you're married, and we never recommend just getting married for real estate because marriage is grand, but divorce is at least $100,000 these days, you could profit up to $500,000 and not pay any taxes on that money whatsoever. So now you can kind of start peeking the door and seeing why people leverage real estate to have maximum tax benefits, and then they're able to exit on some of these strategies and investment opportunities and put hundreds of thousands of tax-free dollars inside of their bank account. All right, so this is my personal journey and the money seed slide. The things that I'm talking about on the previous slide, as well as this slide, I am not a tax professional. Now, I cannot give you tax advice. However, I can tell you exactly what I do on my taxes and what my tax professionals and CPA strategists help me formulate and leverage the corporate ladder structure. Now, before we get into all those loopholes and how do you avoid certain things and not pay any taxes and Uncle Sam more than you already do, I wanted to show you how I got started, because a lot of people talk the talk, but they do not walk the walk. And in 2013, I bought my very first property with an FHA loan because no one told me about my VA home loan. This is also how I know that just buying a home of any loan product is what's best for every single person, regardless of where you come from, what you look like, or what you've been through. Because you can see in 2013, I bought that property for $300,000 in San Diego, which you can't even get a mailbox these days for $300,000. So then I rented out 2 rooms for $800 each, which was the total of $1,600 a month. I saved that and accumulated $72,000 of other people's money, but people that I know, love, and trust, not just people that are on Craigslist and random people that I'm bringing into the confines of my home, because I was renting out rooms within where I was living. Oftentimes, this is referred to as house hacking. This was my very first property. So I saved $72,000 of my own money, but then also $18,000 of tax benefit money because of the things that I just told you on that previous slide, as well as I took my end of the year statement, which is called a 1098 tax form. And I take that to my CPA, and they told me, congratulations, Devin, you're going to get more write-offs this year. You get to write off all your property taxes, all your interest, and any home improvements made to the property. So you're going to get more money back at the end of the year. So over a 4-year period while I was in the service, I got $18,000 of additional tax money coming back to me. So I had $90,000, and I partnered that with my VA home loan, which then put me in 2017, where I bought my second property. My second property was $588,000. In my 20s, that was a massive amount of money, and I was very, very scared. And I broke down 2 different types of thought processes when deciding what I was going to do with that $90,000. Now, most people are going to partner that $90,000 and put it as a down payment on that property, because it's going to reduce, especially at that time, my mortgage by about $500 to $600 per month. So that's a great savings. And that's how most people look at it. How do I chip down my mortgage in order for me to not pay as much every single month, which is very common? But my thought process was, I can go zero down, inject my $90,000 into this property, build an additional structure. And if I go through a little bit more stress, headache, learning, and everything else like that, how much could I rent that for? And I was able to live in one while renting the other, saving money over time. Now I'm proud to say that that property rents out for $7,500 per month, $7,500 per month. Also realizing, you guys, in 2017, when I first bought that property, that rent was not as big. It was not 7,500, but every single year it was going up at least $150 per surrounding zip code. So I knew I was going to be able to increase the rents year after year after year. This then allowed me to profit $4,400 per month after paying my entire mortgage every single month. So this helped contribute significantly, number one, to my confidence and my experience being a homeowner, because this is prior to me getting into real estate whatsoever. But then it also helped change my fundamental thought process, because once you start achieving enough passive income to secure your survival amount, you start thinking differently. And your survival amount then comes off of that budget sheet that Chris was talking about. How much can you afford? Where's your money? How much do you gross? How much do you net at the end of the month? What's going on? And you make different decisions when you're able to replace all your survival amounts, which include food, clothing, shelter, transportation, utilities, healthcare, etc. And that's why I got out of the service. In 2019, I ended up transitioning out in order to serve in this realm, because there was such a substandard performance in the representation that I received being a consumer within real estate. So I figured, why not go out there and provide a higher level of customer service and client journey? And that's exactly what we're doing here today. I continue to save and save and save. Why? Because if you want what you truly, truly want, you must, in your dreams, and you want to get there, you must sacrifice what you want now for what you want most. So I continue to save. Then I bought this piece of land for $75,000, all cash. I know that's a lot of money. I went all in. I only had about $76,000 to my name, and it was all my tenants' money that I had just accumulated over time. And so I bought that piece of land, and I ended up selling it this year for $400,000. So I made $325,000 off of buying that piece of land. People say there's not good opportunities, especially in one of the hottest real estate markets known as Southern California, but you will never hit a target if you don't know what you're looking for. So I knew what I was looking for as far as a piece of land, what was my budget, and I aimed for a property that was much higher at $210,000, and I talked that seller down to $75K, and she took it. Going through that process, I ended up purchasing a $1.7 million duplex. And I say duplex, and I emphasize that because most investors will state that the average cost per unit at $850,000 is a horrible decision. Do not buy that. Do not buy that property. Remember those 4 different rental analyses I told you to pay attention to? One is long-term unfurnished. The second is long-term furnished. The third is midterm rental. And the fourth is short-term rental. So when I evaluated this property with a short-term rental lens on, it made a whole lot of sense. In addition, it had a massive amount of space that you could build additional units on. So that's why I went ahead and pulled the trigger on a duplex, 1.7 million, VA 0 down. I injected $170,000 worth of my own capital. So I continued to save from the previous 3 properties you saw. And I went ahead and took that money and I put it into the property because I went VA 0 down. I bought the ugliest one on the block and I turned that $170,000 and a 1.7 million acquisition price. By the time I owed my first payment around 60 days later, to 60 to 90 days later, it was worth 2.4 million. And now I'm proud to tell you that we're in 2024 transitioning into 2025. And that property's new evaluation model is right around 2.7 million. So I made $1 million equity off of a strategic decision and $170,000. Now I'll continue to search and look for another property as I finish out the game plan over the next 18 months or so with that duplex property. I will pull out that VA entitlement. I will then put a different loan product on that property, and I will go ahead and rinse and repeat this process. This is not all the properties I own. I've even bought another one between now and then, but I didn't want it to overflow and seem like you guys are drinking through a fire hose tonight, because I know that there's a lot of information that we're pushing on you. But this is a step-by-step process. It's not a get-rich scheme overnight. But I'm here to tell you, I'm 33 years old. I've only been doing this since 2013. I'm a high school dropout that never made it out of 10th grade. And if I can do it, I believe that you could do it as well. Any of you guys have comments, questions, or concerns on this slide? Or any previous slides that we've addressed thus far?
Yes, sir. If you could break it down into layman's terms, your value gain breakdown,
For which one?
all the way off to the right for is it the slide that we're looking at now?
Yeah, but
From
for every single house?
just the first 2.
Okay. So the acquisition was $300,000. The V is for the current value on the property. And then the G is for gain, which is the appreciation of the property since the time that I acquired it in 2013.
Understood.
And then how I leverage the monthly cash flow right below it in order to help me get to the next property right above it. So then we get into 2017, 588,000, VA 0 down. That's on the far left column. Then you go to the far right, we're looking at the value at 1.2 million. The appreciation or the gain is 612,000, while the monthly cash flow after paying all debts, liabilities on the property is $4,400 a month. So that's after paying your mortgage. Then I take that money, continue to save, and you make a good decision and you buy a piece of land that people want at a much lower value than what other people would have bought it for. You can do things of that sort. You come up with creative solutions. And then I bought that property 4 blocks from the beach for 1.7 million, VA 0 down. The value 2.4, really 2.7, but let's stick with the slide for right now. 2.4 has $700,000 in appreciation and gain. And why that's so important is because when you leverage your VA home loan, you have 100% cash out refinance option where you can access 100% of that gain or appreciation. And now we never recommend to cash that money out and just go ahead and put it in your bank account, because you won't yield any interest, any dividends. Your money has to stay working for you. It's kind of like your body. A body in motion will stay in motion. Money in motion will continue to make more money over time. And for every $100,000 that you borrow out of your house and you refinance out, your payment will go up about $600, $650, just depending on where you're at. So you have to take that money out and then put and do something with it, whether it's start a new business. I typically like to take my money and invest it into building additional structures on the property. So I force appreciate the property. I access the capital through the refinance option. Chris gives me that money, and I go ahead and I put it back into the property by building additional structures that I could rent out. And as long as those rental amounts exceed, so they bring in more money than what the increase in mortgage is, then I'm positive cash flowing for life. And it's a great deal and it's a great opportunity. So I do it every time. Does that make more sense?
Yes, sir. It
Right.
definitely does.